Hello, everybody, and welcome yet again to the Along the Watchtower podcast. I am LM Walker, and today is 12/17. Today is December 17th, 2020. I'm not a robot. And it is Thursday, the second day of winter storm. But we do have some good news for New York coming up. Got some changes to the minimum wage, though. Honestly, if you're in New York City, it doesn't affect you. Got some COVID news, of course, beer bug news. There's some stuff going on with the cybersecurity hack that recently happened. I actually have a bit of an update on Tulsi Gabbard's last days, and Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. That case, thankfully enough, has not disappeared. Ghislaine has not ended up, suicided. So that's good. We do have momentum on that. Honestly, I'm thinking about my monologue from yesterday, and I've been really thinking about that and considering that. And it's a tough state of affairs. It honestly is, especially me being a person who wants to reach out and engage, and to view and spectate and observe engagements, debates, panels and things of that nature, conventions, workshops. I love to just soak it all in to try and cultivate as much of a multifaceted, multi-angled, nuanced perspective as possible. Personally, it's a lot of work, but I think it's cool. I think it's really awesome when you are kind of introduced to something new. I've spent a good portion of my life up until now kind of closeting myself, probably be sheltering myself, kind of squaring myself away from most things, for reasons that perhaps one day I'll get into soon. My birthday's coming up, and so it'll probably be me being the person that I am. I'll take that time to explain a little bit about myself, but that's later on. At any rate, what's important, I think, to note is that the divisive nature that someone, I feel like Saul Alinsky, or I forgot who wrote the Turner Diaries. It's a fictional book about a takeover of the FBI by militia groups, by like adolescent, teenage, young adult militia groups. It's an older novel. Timothy McVeigh actually he referenced it as his sort of motivational manifesto. The Communist Manifesto. These divisive codexes, they are, linchpin in making sure that above all else within the system we remain fractured. And I have to admit that there are concepts, there are ideas that can be utilized from all things, I think, both good and bad. Because, as much of a unifying effort and principle as Western organized religion can be for a lot of people, and it has been very beneficial for a lot of people for a long time, there are a lot of caveats within it that are absurd. You know what I mean? Working on the Sabbath, and sacrificing your children, and beating your wife if they're disobedient, things of that nature. And this is from not just Western religions, but Eastern ones as well. It causes things like caliphates and, theocratic governments, theocracies that, like in Saudi Arabia, where, they just recently have begun allowing, this was, I think, last year, several years ago, allowing women to drive, but they still have to have a man in the car. They're very repressive and constrictive, and honestly, one would think that the creator as a whole would want us to express ourselves to the fullest of our extent, as long as we are not harming ourselves or others. And I mean, that's really the utmost important thing. But we live in probably the most divisive time, at least that I can think of. The most divisive time that I can remember was under the Bush administration. At the onset of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. That polarized for sure everyone. We had the banking crisis of '08, and that caused Occupy, and that was divisive. We've had the rise of BLM 10 years ago or so, and and it's like all of that is kind of cultivated to it's like multiple fractured movements that are really a representative of the overall shift in zeitgeist that's happening right now. and will continue to happen. There's no stopping it, right? Interesting enough, they say the revolution will not be televised. Well, it's like, I'm pretty sure, although it's not the revolution that everyone thought or asked for, it's happening, and it's happening all over Twitter and social media for the most part. Now, here's the thing, right? Just because, that's what I mean. Just because it's not necessarily the revolution you expected or thought expected how it would look, or the one that you thought would happen for a particular cause, doesn't mean that it's not happening. Like I said yesterday, we're staring off a precipice, and instead of looking up in this glorious sort of in this glorious like unified effort, like we had for the space race, where despite our differences, I mean, we all wanted to and dreamed of something larger than ourselves, larger than the conflicts that were occurring on this planet during that time, as tumultuous as it was. And it's like, here's the thing, like, you may not have been dreaming necessarily about America going to the moon, but you were dreaming of something bigger. The civil rights movement was kicking off during that period, and there were aspirations. It's about having aspirations and not sinking so deeply into despair and melancholy and morbidity that all you end up doing is sorry, I keep moving this, is participating in the macabre and adding to the disturbance of it. And I try very hard to not feed into that. But I digress. Today overall was okay. News has actually been kind of, but actually with Tulsi Gabbard, I will end up, being able to exemplify something I often talk about, to follow a policy and not a politician, right? Because there will be things that you will support and things that you don't, just like follow policies, not political parties. But that said, we'll get to it here. New York State minimum wage to go up in 2021. Now, New York City is already at $15, so they're not going to see an uptick. But at the very least, New York State is going to see something. They're going to see it go from $11.80 to $12.50. We'll just read a little bit of this. The minimum wage is set to rise in all parts of New York State outside of the city next month. Excuse me. The minimum hourly wage will rise to $12.50 from $11.80 on December 31st, 2020. The minimum wage is set to rise in all parts of New York State outside of New York City next month. The minimum hourly wage is set to rise to $12.50 from $11.80 on December 31st everywhere outside of New York City, Long Island, and Westchester County. That 70-cent an hour raise will mean an extra $28 a week in the paycheck of a person working a full-time job paying minimum wage. Long Island and Westchester County will see their minimum wage rise to $14 from $13 an hour on December 31st. That will mean an extra $40 a week for a person working full-time in the minimum wage job. Folks in New York City will let you know firsthand, $15 an hour isn't getting you anywhere. It's not getting you anywhere, especially with exorbitant, like $4 a slice. I mean, I can stop eating pizza. The whole problem is that we have like a 8.56 sales tax, I believe is what it is, and on the dollar, and just exorbitant rent. We have the second highest taxation rate in the country, next to California. So it is absurd. New York City will see no change, which already is at $15 an hour. Employers in New York City with 11 or more workers have been required to pay $15 an hour since the 31st, 2018, December 31st. Employers in New York City with 10 or fewer workers have been required to pay a minimum of $15 an hour since December 31st, 2019. Long Island and Westchester are scheduled to go to $15 an hour at the end of 2021, but it is not clear when the rate will rise to $15 in the upstate area. Starting in 2021, annual increases in upstate New York will be determined by the Commissioner of Labor on or before October 1 based on economic indices, including the Consumer Price Index. That's, it's a good start. It's a great start. We'll see where that takes us, or them. I mean, us, I guess. Yeah, because I'm definitely making just... We're hoping that there is a sort of reflection of the lack of capability that someone working minimum wage or just above working minimum wage has in major metropolitan city like New York and a state like New York. But it's just with such high taxes, high rent, high cost of living, Uh, it just doesn't reflect. It just doesn't. But I digress. Moving on a little bit here. COVID-19 update. Gotta stop because it doesn't matter. California's vaccine allocation cut by Feds as state hits daily death record and cases continue to surge. I often talk about statistics and the government response to, in particular, the death and infection statistic. Now, all of these numbers matter. They're all lives, right? They're not just numbers. But, the ICU admission rate, I think, is important because it at least definitively gives us an idea of how, what kind of effects that the disease is having. If you see a mutation you see an admission rate jump, right? At least in my mind, I would conclude that the disease is mutated to cause, a respiratory infection, to attack the ability of, the patient to breathe properly. Because usually, as we've seen, ICU leads to ventilator. And so it's kind of, at least for me, a tall tale sign of an increasing severity. The expression that it's always darkest before the dawn just took on an even more ominous timbre for California's fight against the deep wounds of the coronavirus. And also remember, California's shutdown is related to ICU availability. So as death from COVID-19 hits a horrible all-time high in the ravaged Golden State, and confirmed cases of the disease rise to staggering heights, the promise of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine has been hobbled, at least for the time being. Earlier this week, we talked about a projected allocation of $393,000, which was based on what the federal government had communicated to us. Aaron Mellon of Governor Gavin Newsom's office told Deadline Thursday the federal government delayed the number of Pfizer vaccines that California will receive in the next shipment. Many states received new estimated shipment amounts, they added. Based on the latest information, we're expecting about 233,000 doses. As to what instigated the change, you'd have to check with the federal government. We're focused on quickly distributing the vaccines we have to Californians in a way that is equitable and transparent. There are millions of doses of the two-shot vaccine currently sitting in Pfizer warehouses. However, it seems the change in allocations to California and other states seems to have come from a modeling program set up by the Fed's Operation Warp Speed to game out distribution methods. Shifting from theory to practice, the DoD originating program pumped out new data, hence the lower numbers. I see. This news comes also as another COVID-19 vaccine from Moderna has just received the go-ahead from the NFDA panel today. The agency could give full approval to the second vaccine by this weekend, with the CDC expected to follow in rapid success. Not that it will help those who have died in the interim. Wow, what a way to sum that up. But yeah, that was the update as of 4:45 p.m. I kind of want to dovetail that into something I brought up yesterday. The Health and Human Services Science Advisor Paul Alexander, in emails recently released or discovered, was talking about herd immunity, and his idea that he was a staunch proponent of, because he campaigned for this all throughout July, all through the summer, when we saw the mutation happen that was afflicting, upper respiratory systems and causing infections and increasing ICU admission rate, right? 1, 2, 3. He was advocating getting young people, teenage adolescents and early 20s, having them get infected to increase herd immunity. His argument was that the immune system, our greatest weapon, is being kind of stifled with the stay-in-place order. Now, while I agree as far as the immune system, because eventually, we have to adapt to it, or else we're going to need seasonal vaccinations. And if there's a severe mutation, because diseases mutate all the time, but if there's a severe mutation and a function change, right? Because remember, it originally didn't start out really afflicting young people and not children or infants at all, and just old people. And then we saw the upper respiratory whatnot go down, and we saw we saw systemic organ failure happen, and then it started to afflict young people, and then we saw infants getting affected, right? So obviously it's changing and shifting, and sometimes in benign ways, and sometimes in more egregious and deadly ways. And so, it's definitely something to just take into account on a case-by-case basis. That being said, though, we saw the situation with the minks over in Europe, and they had to cull 17 million, and even that wasn't enough. And then it ended up jumping to America, and we saw in American mink farms, infection occur. And now in Utah, we recently seen a wild mink be tested and found infected. Although we've also seen other animals infected as well, and it's just it seems to be. I don't want to say getting out of control, because that's just how diseases work. It's entering the biosphere. It's a novel virus, and it's making its way through the flora and fauna. And we're seeing the different effects and mutations that it will have, and this will continue to happen, I believe, for the rest of our lives, for the rest of our days. It's part of our cycle, our system now. At least as of right now, I don't think eradication is likely anytime soon. But it's funny that Paul Alexander wanted to have young people get infected in July. I was campaigning for this all through July. New York Times article says, people, and this is an opinion piece, people thought COVID-19 was relatively harmless for younger adults. They were wrong. New research shows that July may have been the deadliest month for young adults in modern American history. Not only due to COVID, but for a compounding number of factors, I'm guessing. But COVID, part of this obviously. The largest burden of COVID-19 has undoubtedly fallen on people older than 65. They account for around 80% of deaths in the United States. But if we momentarily eclipse that from our mind's eye, something else becomes visible, the corona of this virus. Oh Lord. Young adults are dying at historic rates. In research published on Wednesday in the Journal of the American Medical Association, we found that among U.S. adults ages 25 to 44 from March through the end of July, there were almost 12,000 more deaths than were expected based on historical norms. In fact, July appears to have been the deadliest month among this age group in modern American history. Over the past 20 years, an average of 11,000 young American adults died each July. This year, that number swells to over 16,000. The trends continued this fall. Based on prior trends, around 154,000 in this demographic had been projected to die in 2020. We surpassed that total in mid-November. Even if death rates suddenly return to normal in December, and we know that they will not, we would anticipate well over 170,000 deaths among U.S. adults in this demographic by the end of 2020. While detailed data are not yet available for all areas, we know COVID-19 is the driving force behind these excessive deaths. Consider and by the way, I'm noticing that they're not saying as a direct result of catching COVID-19, so it's really just a compounding number of factors. The hardships, that young people undergo has increased. The hardships that everyone undergoes on a daily basis have increased dramatically. But the pressures and the hardships, especially among young people, it's like each demographic's own pressures and hardships have increased dramatically, and under the strain we have seen young people especially in particular suffer. And it's like you try and look at the numbers proportionately, and it's just one of those things where everyone is suffering, and you don't want to say some are suffering more than others. So relative to previous years, this is the hardest year seen for young people, I guess is the best thing to say. While detailed data are not yet available, we know COVID-19 is the driving force behind these excess deaths. Consider New York State. In April and May, COVID-19 killed 1,081 adults aged 20 to 49, according to statistics we gathered from the New York State Health Department. Remarkably, this figure towers over the state's usual leading cause of death in that age group, unintentional accidents, including drug overdoses and road accidents, which combined to cause 495 deaths in this demographic during April and May of 2018, the most recent year for which the data are available to the public. And so it is just it's tumultuous. It is a crisis the likes of which we have not seen since perhaps the Great Depression. Suicide, addiction, homelessness, joblessness, death in general, all are above. All have risen. Domestic abuse, I think I said addiction already. Suicide, I feel like I said that already. Mental illness is definitely, the overall mental health of our species is declining drastically. But we're gonna keep going, keep hoping, keep fighting. Family behind OxyContin attests to its role in opioid crisis. I found this interesting. I've never seen a family the family of a multinational billion-dollar corporation. And it's like, what does that mean? The family of a multi-billion. So does a family own these companies? So does a family own Bayer? And so, like, should they have apologized for Factor 8 when the blood supply was poisoned with the AIDS virus? Uh, I mean, I tried. This is an interesting thing. Let me just read this. Two owners of the company that makes OxyContin acknowledged to Congress on Thursday that the powerful prescription painkiller played a role in the opioid epidemic. I see. Well, okay, I want to express my family's deep sadness about the opioid crisis, David Sackler, whose family owns Purdue Farm, said in a rare appearance in the public forum. It's just, oh, I see. No, they mean literally. Kathy Sackler, David Sackler's cousin, told the House Oversight and Reform Committee that she knows the loss of any. So yeah, no, it's a family business. Well, some of these companies, not all of them, but in this case, wow, a family business that develops a drug that is so addictive, that is more addictive than heroin. These pharmaceutical opioids are more addictive than heroin. Yeah, I just found that interesting, but we're just gonna keep sliding on through. But this is an interesting article. It doesn't. There's nothing. They don't do anything. They were sued. It was like a $21.8 billion lawsuit that included Pfizer, I think Bayer, Purdue, Johnson and Johnson. So it's interesting. I mean, they're coming back, kind of groveling for goodwill. They're now lost goodwill. Whatever. That's to be expected from these companies. Russia, right? The recent cybersecurity hack is being pointed towards a Russian hacker group called Cozy Bear. Never heard of it. I mean, I feel like Yogi Bear would have, but yeah, that's because I'm American. But yeah, this is interesting. I didn't know this could be done, but and until the precedent is set, right, then you don't know that it can be done. Russia can't use its name and flag at the next two Olympics, which goes to say, like, so they can participate in the Olympics, but they just can't use their flag or name. So then how would anyone know that they're, and it's like, if you can't use your flag or name and you can't use someone else's flag or name, are you anonymous country? Like, I found some of this interesting. I haven't gone through the whole thing. Russia will not be able to use its name, flag, and anthem at the next two Olympics or at any World Championships for the next 2 years after a ruling Thursday by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The Lausanne-based court halved the 4-year ban proposed last year by the World Anti-Doping Agency in a landmark case that accused Russia of state-ordered tampering of a testing laboratory database in Moscow. The ruling also blocked Russia from bidding to host major sporting events for 2 years. Russian athletes and teams will still be allowed to compete at next year's Tokyo Olympics and the 2022 Winter Games in Beijing, as well as World Championships, including the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, if they are not banned for or suspected of doping. One win for Russia is the proposed team name at major events. The name Russia can be retained on uniforms if the words neutral athletes or equivalents like neutral team have equal prominence. So if all three are on the same line and the same font and size, Russia neutral athlete. Oh God! All right, I just thought that was interesting, given the news here about the cybersecurity hack. I'm just going to go and give an update on that, as I said. When it occurred, and we read the tidbits that we had, I wanted to see what was happening as far as it unfolding, because as it unfolds, we'll learn more of what could have been extracted, and perhaps as something more about the alleged culprits, Cozy Bear, because I don't know much about them as of yet. However, this update is very intriguing, as you'll find out when I read. It seems that the hack is ongoing. So the malware that Cozy Bear installed, allegedly, so the malware that was installed during the hack is actually still there. Trying to remove it, apparently is a very complicated process. Extrication is not easily done with malware of this level of sophistication. The level of sophistication, and in fact, is how, according to them, it led to them kind of figuring that it was this group, Cozy Bear. It's a group of hackers, and so we'll find out. We'll see here. Yeah, some of the agencies that were affected, interestingly enough, combined, kind of at least say to me, something. The information I'm looking for was related to like the virus and perhaps the census. You'll see why in a minute here. But this is from NPR. U.S. Cybersecurity Agency, U.S. Cyber Agency, computer hack poses grave risk. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency on Thursday delivered an ominous warning about a major computer intrusion, saying it poses a grave risk to federal, state, and local governments, as well as private companies and organizations. The Trump administration had said relatively little since the hack on government computers at multiple agencies was first announced last week. But the CISA, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security, offered a broad overview. One second. I forgot that was on. Anyway, offered a, just gotta get it done. Offered a broad overview in its latest comments. The agency noted the attack began around March and is still ongoing, meaning that the malware that's been placed on computers may still be capturing valuable information as we speak. That I have not heard of, from everything from the hack of the DNC to, Hillary Clinton hack, the WikiLeaks stuff, of all of the cybersecurity intrusions, Verizon being hacked, Sony being hacked. I've never heard of like an ongoing malware issue as far as like being aware of the hack days after the fact and like sitting there and saying, well, this is actually still happening. We don't know. We can't remove the malware as of yet. The only thing we can do is advise you to not use the systems. So yeah, in addition, CISA said that removing the malware would be highly complex and challenging for the organizations. Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, the SVR, is believed responsible, according to the experts who cite the sophisticated nature of the attack. But the Trump administration has not formally blamed Russia, and Russia has denied involvement. How can I prove that I'm innocent if I didn't do it? Let's sit together. Let's discuss. Let's restart our dialogue, said Russian Ambassador Anatoly Anatov Wednesday in a Zoom call. U.S. intelligence agencies have started briefing members of Congress, and Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut said the information clearly pointed to Cozy Bear, a hacking group widely considered to be from Russian foreign intelligence. Cozy Bear. But so far, the list of agencies affected are the Commerce Department, money, Department of Homeland Security, right? Pentagon, Military, Treasury Department, money, Postal Service, which I believe, I know this, they have their own census department, but Postal Service deals with the census in some way, shape, or form, I thought. And if it's not the census, then it's simply just like personnel, like information. If you wanted information as far as like records, packages, things like that. I mean, the Postal Service has got it. We're all logged into the U.S. Postal Service, and then the National Institutes of Health. So it's, for me, I'm hearing between those last two, like statistics. Why the NIH? What could you possibly want from the NIH? And it's like, well, if there's a hack into a health institute, into the National Health Institute during a pandemic, I mean, are you looking for COVID stats? I don't know. All speculative. Department of Energy acknowledged computer systems had been compromised, but it said at this point the malware is isolated to business networks and hasn't impacted the mission-essential national security functions of the department, which include Nuclear Security Administration. So we will not have any Hiroshimas, thankfully enough. Let's see what AP has got going on. Federal authorities expressed alarm Thursday about a long undetected. So we had detected this Thursday, but it had been long. It wasn't like this has been a prolonged ongoing attack. It wasn't like a sudden tactical strike. But it's been a long undetected intrusion into U.S. and other computer systems around the globe that officials suspected was carried out by Russian hackers. The nation's cybersecurity agency warned of a grave risk. The hack compromised federal agencies and critical infrastructure in a sophisticated attack that was hard to detect and will be difficult to undo. The Department of Energy acknowledged it was among those who it had hacked. The attack, if authorities can prove it was carried out by Russia, creates a fresh foreign policy problem for Trump in his final days in office. It's going to be Biden's problem, really. Trump, whose administration has been criticized for eliminating a White House cybersecurity advisor and downplaying Russian interference into the 2016 election, has made no public statements about the breach. Of course, they got to bring that up. Now, President-elect Joe Biden, who will inherit the potentially difficult situation, spoke up forcefully about the hack, declaring that he and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris will make dealing with this breach a top priority. The agency previously said the perpetrators had used network management software from Texas-based SolarWinds to infiltrate computer networks. It's a new alert and said attackers may have used other methods as well. Tech giant Microsoft, which has helped respond to the breach, revealed that Thursday that it's been working to notify 40 organizations that were compromised using additional and sophisticated measures beyond the back door into SolarWinds systems. They said most of the compromised customers are in the United States, with victims in Canada, Mexico, Belgium, Spain, the United Kingdom, Israel, and the UAE. So, again, as always, we'll see as this unfolds. Check out AP and NPR. They got some stuff on it. But Blumenthal's hoping that he's trying to get more information released to the public. Yeah, we'll see. But moving along, there's this stuff about the Biden aide who called a bunch of Republicans fuckers. And the thing is that in the context of what she was saying, it's not like she was wrong. She was just she was trying to convey the stubbornness and the. I mean, here's the thing. I'm not sure if she was coming from like a populist progressive standpoint, like, oh, these GOP members are they're misanthropic people who only care about themselves and the consolidation of power, because that definitely goes for both sides, honestly. But I think at least what I could really confirm she was trying to convey is that despite their nature, I guess she was trying to say that she needs to work with them. That they're a bunch of fuckers, but she still has to work with them. You'll see here. Jen O'Malley Dillon, President-elect Joe Biden's campaign manager and incoming White House Deputy Chief of Staff, walked back comments she made in a recent interview suggesting that congressional Republicans were a bunch of fuckers. The mea culpa came in a virtual conversation Thursday with veteran Democratic operative Stephanie Cutter and Teddy Goff, during which O'Malley Dillon acknowledged she used some words that I could have probably chosen better. In an interview with Glamour magazine, Dillon recalled the blowback Biden faced from fellow Democrats throughout the party's 2020 nominating contest for invoking a bygone era of Washington bipartisanship, which many progressives viewed as unrealistic and outdated. In the primary, because the whole idea is going back to business as usual. It isn't that progressives don't want to reach across the aisle. I mean, well aware that you have to work with people you don't like. You have to work with everybody. But the fact remains is that an establishment Democrat is not what one looks towards, especially as a progressive, to try and get things that wouldn't normally, try to get things that would shake up normal legacy politicians. That's the thing. If you want to do something innovative, you don't look towards someone who's been in office 47 years doing the exact same thing, which has pretty much been nothing other than enrich himself. Sorry. The reality of the matter is that, I don't like the way they phrase it, progressive viewed as unrealistic and outdated. I mean, it is realistic that you have to work with people you don't like and you have to reach across the aisle to get bills done. But it certainly is outdated, and he most certainly is outdated. In the primary, people would mock him. Like, you think you can work with, for starters, it's not like you had, for example, Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard, who we'll talk about later, or Andrew Yang or Peter. You don't have these guys talking about, I won't work with Republicans, I won't reach across the aisle. That makes no sense. But what it is that they are speaking of has nothing to do with returning to like a sort of civility that is insulting to people trying to get things done. It's insulting to people that are trying to get things changed. They don't need that much sort of placation, and that's the thing. When you say that, when you say the things that spout the rhetoric of Joe Biden, it sounds more like being prevaricated and kind of told to settle down, and things are gonna settle down and get back to the good old days. It's like, what is that? What the hell does that mean? You sound like Trump. When you say we're going to get back to the way things used to be. You sound like Trump. Make America great again. We're going to bring America back to the way things used to be. You sound like Trump. And it's like, no, we don't want things to go back to before. That's the whole fucking point. Oh, man. That's what I mean about these establishment politicians. It's about the policy, right? So when you talk about Medicare for all as someone like Joe Biden, and then a vote comes to the floor and you don't support it, well then I know that you've just been placating me. That's why it's so important to have a vote, for example, for Medicare for all. Now we just take that example and amplify that throughout any policy position that is progressive, that a politician will speak positively about or be a proponent of until it's fucking crunch time. And this is the worst case scenario that tends to happen, they are never pressured and there is no crunch time, and they get to where they're aiming to be, whether it be a House seat or the presidency, and then nobody has to hold their feet to the fire. Time and time again. Jesus. Alright. Well, I don't care that this... Okay, let me read the quote. In the primary, people would mock him like, you think you can work with Republicans, O'Malley Dillon told Glamour. I'm not saying they're not a bunch of fuckers. Mitch McConnell was terrible. But this sense that you couldn't wish for that. You couldn't wish for this bipartisan ideal. He rejected that. And that's all. And and it's like, dude, you know what? Both sides are calling both sides worse. I don't care. I think it's being blown out of proportion for obvious reasons. And I know some people are like, well, see, that's what GOP do. They're being crybabies. It's like, no, you know what? The left does it too. Everyone does it. People need to step out of this. They need to fight for a principle and for an ideal and not for a political party or a particular politician. There's a whole lot of peas, but you know what I mean? You feel me? All right, so I like this, right? We're getting to the top or the bottom, I guess, of the show, and we're going to talk about Tulsi. But before we do, she put on the House floor a bill to repeal the Patriot Act. I'm not sure if a review of 230 is on there, but she has been a staunch opponent of the FANG, really, the FANG, the stocks, the companies that are behind FANG, Facebook, Apple, Google, Amazon. And I don't think Netflix, because what it is that she wants to break up monopolies and large companies that are able to conduct antitrust violations like it's nobody's business, and then they just pay off the fines that the FEC or the SEC gives them. Google's hit with the third major antitrust suit, and this time from 38 attorneys general. A bipartisan coalition of states on Thursday became the third group of regulators within 2 months to file a federal lawsuit accusing Google of using its monopoly power to violate antitrust laws as America's tech giants face increasing scrutiny over their size and power. Google sits at the crossroads of so many areas of our digital economy and has used its dominance to illegally squash competitors, monitor nearly every aspect of our digital lives, and profit to the tune of billions. New York attorney Letitia James said in a statement on Thursday, announcing the state's participation in the civil suit filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. 38 attorneys general led by Colorado and Nebraska accused Google of three main anti-competitive practices, including using exclusionary contracts like one with Apple that makes Google the default search engine on Apple devices. Google is also accused of denying specialized search sites like Expedia, Angie's List, and Yelp of prime real estate on its search results page, and of using its search engine marketing tool to deprive competitors like Microsoft's Bing, of ad dollars. The suit comes less than 24 hours after a civil antitrust suit filed by 10 states, led by Texas, focused on Google's ad tech business, and less than 2 months after the Justice Department and 11 Republican state attorneys general filed a civil lawsuit focused on Google's search and search advertising business. Between Google altering its search algorithm to shadow ban and hide search results that are really just politically and ideologically opposing to what we see a lot of staff at Google express, because they're very open about how they feel on things. They're very left-leaning. Most of Silicon Valley is, as everyone knows. And to YouTube and its lovely, lovely issues of shadow banning and of content curation done by its legion of curators, that wield an ideological hammer, the likes of which we only had read in 1984, down the memory hole, newspeak. And so I'm glad to see this happen. I'm glad to see, because what it is, it's building momentum, and it's sort of it's congregating. Others are congregating around it. So we're having multiple lawsuits, multiple bills in House. The spotlight, it's more than just a spotlight, and it's more than just Senate hearings at this point, thankfully, and hopefully it is the combination of all of these efforts that sees something done other than just more large fines. So Tulsi Gabbard I voted for Tulsi Gabbard as a write-in for the election, the 2020 election, and I kind of fell victim to what I often tell people to not do, to support a policy and not a politician or person. And the whole thing about it is I'm not sure why. So I'll read this first, but there's a bill that she introduced the whole idea of the bill is to remove federal funding for schools that allow transgendered athletes to compete in either respective category. You know what I mean? And yeah. So I have no idea why she did this, especially since she's on her way out. She's not seeking re-election. I don't know why. I don't know. She's never expressed any transphobic, homophobic ideology or rhetoric. It's unfortunate to see. I don't think the government should be regulating sports programs. If school sports programs want to allow transgender athletes, that's their issue. That's on them. I have no idea why she would insist on inserting herself into that. However, because this was brought to my attention because I had posted about the bill to repeal the Patriot Act with her and Representative Massey, and it's called the Protect Our Civil Liberties Act. And then someone, instead of commenting about, and this is the stuff I hate, instead of commenting about what I posted on, they were just like, oh, imagine using your last few days in office to revoke the rights or slam on the rights of trans people. It's pathetic. And it's like, well, firstly, that's not even what this is about. I do appreciate you bringing that to my attention, but you could have done that in a number of ways. That's a problem. I won't say the problem with the left, but that's more of a problem that I've seen with members of society that represent the left than the right. There's a lot of trolls out there, and definitely a lot of trolls coming from the right. Like there's all sorts of all types. What I'm looking for is like a predominance, and what I get predominantly is a sort of shutout or shutdown situation from the left or from representative members of the left, usually neoliberal, young white neoliberals, or young black neoliberals, and usually from the right, it's usually, these easy, like 20 to older, mid-20s to older so-called conservatives who either espouse horrible ideas they just usually espouse horrible ideas, but they are receptive to a conversation. They are eager to have a dialogue, to have a forum which they can just spout their bullshit. That's the thing. They want to be heard, so they know they need to listen. What I usually get from the left is a shut out and shut down. If they don't like, and it's like, even, for example, I've gotten flack because I did not vote Joe Biden, but I did vote Democrat. Not technically, I voted Democrat. But for me, I voted for Tulsi. To people, they see that I voted Democrat, but they see that I did not vote the Democrat that they felt I should have voted. So I still get flack, right? And it's that's not the point of this section here. What we're going to find, though, is that a person can do both good and bad things. And that's why you support the ideas that a person is a proponent of, not the person. I mean, you want to support the person, too, but you can only support a person up to a certain extent. People lie, they cheat, they steal. People are fallible, they make mistakes, they make bad choices. This was a good choice. So, Massey, Gabbard team up on bill to repeal the Patriot Act. Representative Thomas Massey and Tulsi Gabbard have teamed up to introduce a bill designed to repeal the Patriot Act. The two House members are proposing bipartisan legislation designed to limit government surveillance of people without warrants and probable cause. The Protect Our Civil Liberties Act would repeal both the Patriot Act and the FISA Amendments Act that permitted government agencies to collect mass telephone and email data. Gabbard and Massey argue that this surveillance violates America's right to privacy and their civil liberties. In a video announcement Wednesday, Gabbard said the bill would make sure that Congress re-examines how best to strike this balance of protecting our national security interests while also ensuring that the constitutional rights of every single American is preserved. Protection of our civil liberties is essential, she said. Join us in making sure that our constitutional rights are upheld. So it's like, okay, and that's all well and good. This bill would also make retaliation against any federal national security whistleblowers such as Snowden illegal and require that Government Accountability Office regularly monitor domestic surveillance programs. It would also ban government-mandated backdoors built into electronics and software that allows the government to get past any private technology. And it's like, there's no way that anyone would argue against this. Obviously, this is a good thing, regardless of who puts it onto the floor. That's why it's like, all right, well, great, Tulsi, thanks for doing this. Somebody needed to do it, right? That should be the thought process. Somebody needed to do it. Cool, it was you. We appreciate you for doing it. And then we keep it moving to try and get it actually done because that's more important than fluffing Tulsi, right? Because what ends up happening is that soon after she puts up a bill that, and I don't like the way this headline sucks because it's incorrect technically. It wouldn't ban trans women and girls from female sports. It restricts funding from schools that actually allow trans women and girls in female sports. It's all about wording and all about crafting the narrative. The bill doesn't, it's not like a ban. That's what I mean about government regulation. I don't think the government can actually regulate sports programs at schools. What they can do though is withhold your money. That's how they get you. It's like, yo, you want our money? You want our money? You gotta bend over. So let's just read this. Again, it's unfortunate because I did like Tulsi up until this very bill here. I can't really think about anything. I mean, she's had to support and sign bills. I believe she did sign the bill she did sign the bill to go into Iraq for Operation Iraqi Freedom too. I could be wrong about that, but for the most part, very few political compromises, and all in all, just pretty good. So this is unfortunate, but Democratic Hawaiian and Tulsi Gabbard introduced a bill into the House of Representatives on Thursday that would dictate Title IX protections for female athletes be based on biological sex, a term often used to refer to gender assigned to a person at birth. That's advocate have decreed as inherently transphobic. Copy edit. Title IX prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in any educational program or activity that receives federal funding, and is well known for its requirement that women's sports programming receive equal support to men's sports programming. Gabbard, who declined to run for re-election in 2020 and is in the final days of her congressional term, introduced the bill titled the Protect Women's Sports Act, with Republican Oklahoma Representative Mark Wayne Mullen. His name is Mark Wayne. Okay. Republican Georgia Senator Kelly Loeffler introduced a similar bill titled the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act into the Senate. Oh boy. Title IX is being weakened by some states who are misinterpreting it and creating uncertainty, undue hardship, and lost opportunities for female athletes. Our legislation protects Title IX's original intent, which was based on the general biological distinction between men and women athletes based on sex. Again, I'm not, because if there was a violation of Title IX happening, I mean, how could that's what I don't understand. So it's a bill to reaffirm something that exists, but apparently has not received any violation thereof. What it is that they are reaffirming the biological aspect of it, right? I don't know. I mean, I understand why from a scientific perspective, but I don't understand why from a governance perspective. If a school is comfortable, well, here's the thing. If a school feels politically pressured to allow trans athletes, that's different than a school simply allowing trans athletes because it wants to allow trans athletes. I never support coercion. I never support doing anything out of pressure, right? However, biologically speaking, prenatal testosterone does give you an advantage to your bone density and your bone and muscle density. Like that's science. If schools don't mind that, then fine, so be it. Go about your business. If they do mind it, then regulate it as you see fit. I just don't feel like, because I feel like this is a micromanagement on the part of government. I don't feel like it's the place of government to, because they've already implemented Title IX, so now it's up to schools to look to Title IX to see if their program, in their eyes, fits it. No one's crying illegality, but you do see female athletes across the country decrying that they are at a disadvantage, which they technically are from a scientific standpoint, as far as, again, muscular structure, muscular density, muscular and bone density. We have twitch reaction. We have all sorts of things. When you get testosterone sooner, you have more benefits. That's just how that works, you know. And that is not to say that trans athletes don't belong, but that's the reality of from a scientific standpoint, from a biological standpoint, men and women. Now, I'm not a biologist, but that's kind of what everyone knows as far as the effects of testosterone on the body. But lastly but not least, Ghislaine Maxwell. She's been caught for a while now. She hasn't suicided, and there was a big air quotes, and she actually sought release for a $28.5 million bail package. I've never even heard of a thing called a bail package. So she got her friends. She pulled up bail herself. She got the bail company to put up bail. She got the security company that's going to be with her on house arrest to put up bail. Listen to this. Ghislaine Maxwell, accused of being an accomplice to Jeffrey Epstein, is asking to be released on a proposed $28.5 million bail package. Maxwell, 58, will remain in custody of a private security guard at a residence in New York City. Maxwell wants to stay in New York and have her day in court so she can clear her name. Documents filed in federal court on Monday revealed that she is married. That was a new one. But nothing's come out about him yet, so I didn't feel like bringing anything up. But anyway, in July, she was charged by federal prosecutors with helping recruit, groom, and sexually abuse minors. Her late boyfriend, a traffic ring operated by Epstein, her late former boyfriend. She was ordered jailed pending trial, saying that her wealth could, allow her to flee. She pled not guilty. And so, here we go. $22.5 million of the bond would be co-signed by Maxwell and her spouse. Before the filing, she had not disclosed, actually, that she was married. She was trying to protect him, naturally. So, $22.5 million represents the figure that is the value of all of her assets. In addition, 5 bonds totaling $5 million would be signed by what the court filing describes as Maxwell's closest friends and family members, whose names are all redacted, because, she's not going to risk them. At least that's what they're thinking. The company would provide security to Maxwell. The company that would be providing security to Maxwell also put up a $1 million bond. Like, talk about friends in high places. But they actually caught this guy, Jean-Luc Brunel, a modeling agent suspected of recruiting girls for Epstein. So they're popping these guys left and right, thankfully enough. And, unfortunately, the head of the snake, so-called, is dead. But you notice how no one else seems to be dying. And I also want to point out that Ghislaine Maxwell got caught, and then not like 2 weeks later, the Wayfair thing happened, which I know. But I just find all of the timing of this curious. I find all this curious. I'm fascinated by it. But modeling mogul Jean-Luc Brunel, a close associate and one-time business partner of Epstein, has been arrested in France and being held for questioning. Brunel was arrested Wednesday at the Paris Charles de Gaulle airport trying to go to Senegal. He's been long accused of enabling and participating in Epstein's abuse of girls and using the promise of modeling work to lure his victims. His detention marked the start of legal woes for another member of the inner circle. That seems to be... Hold on. So... Ooh, that's brutal. Epstein and Brunel were both friends and business partners, Epstein providing Brunel with $1 million line of credit to help fund Brunel's MC2 modeling management agency, which is in Miami Beach. When in New York, Brunel and the agency's models would stay in a building owned by Epstein's brother Mark. And he flew on the plane, the Lolita Express, 25 times. All right. So we'll see how this turns out, as this unfolds. That'll be all for this evening, folks. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, be well and be well to each other.